Hello, and welcome to Birth Through the Veil. I'm Melissa Camrudin, and this week I'm joined by Paris. We connected at Earth Daughters last year when I attended one of her offerings on healing the mother wound. Paris is joining me today to share her journey from disembodiment and dysmorphia, culminating in breast implants, and then coming to the bottom of herself in order to come home to herself through explant surgery. And in this process, finding and embracing the cyclical nature of life and the feminine and our rites of passage and the gifts that this journey brings. I first heard Paris share a little bit about this journey on social media. She did a story series in the fall, and someone sent it to me. And I just knew this was a story that we needed to hear in fuller detail. Hi, Paris.
Hello, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
Why don't you start us off? Tell us about your mothering journey and your journey as a woman. Where do you feel like that story begins for you?
So I think as it's so resonant for most of us as women, it is a great awakening once we are initiated into the realm of conceiving a child and bringing forth that child and raising that child. And within it is the birth of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I had no conscious awareness of that, the depth of that journey going into my own journey of motherhood. I entered motherhood in a very disconnected, numbed out state. And I was very much oblivious to so much of that. And I was very young. I conceived my first when I was 19. And so I was still very much a maiden in every way.
Yeah, I can relate.
And it was the most fantastic thing that ever could have happened to me. And so through that journey, I started to realize after the birth of my first daughter that, oh my goodness, there was so much to this journey that I didn't see and I was not awake to until after the fact. You know, I was the conventional hospital birth and everything was medicalized, and I just did it because that's what you do, right? And there was no other conversations happening in the circles around me about anything outside of that. And so I was naive, honestly, Melissa. I was naive to even the fact that women could have home births and could have free births. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I was that naive, right?
Me too. I had that first birth too.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so it was after that experience and the traumas that I had to face through that experience that started my awakening, right? And realizing that, oh my gosh, I have autonomy here and I can choose differently. And this is not what I wanted. And then the grieving process, right, of all of that amidst rediscovering yourself as a mother. Now you're a whole new version of a woman. Mm-hmm. So it was a very challenging journey for me in those early years. And honestly, it was so slow. You know, the little pieces clicking together for my awakening was a very gradual process, very gradual process. We consciously conceived, my husband and I consciously conceived our second because we did not understand anything having our first. You know, it was a huge surprise. And so that changed immediately, you know, after we had Acadia, and we're like, okay, we need to understand my cycle. And so that started to awaken me to my cyclical nature. And, you know, like I was saying, all these little pieces that started to formulate and come together. Mm-hmm. And my birth with my second was a lot more sovereign, and it was a reclamation of myself and bringing life into this world. And again, there was so many things that I would change looking back, but it was what I needed in that season of my life. Mm-hmm. And through that, I was very alone. I did not have a circle of wise women around me. I did not have a circle of women who were awakened around me. And that hit me like a freight train after having 2 babies now under the age of 2. And I was extremely malnourished. We could talk a whole nother podcast about lifestyle choices. I was not fully awake to so much of that. And that started to come into play there. And at that time, here I am only like 21, right? So I hit rock bottom after having my second, because I did not know how to nourish myself. I'm putting all these pieces together as I'm fumbling around in this season of becoming a mother and mothering 2 children now. And, we're in the early stages of marriage too yet, me and my husband, right? We got married at 18. So it was just so many new beginnings, like boom, 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 boom. And I lost so much weight. And there's obviously a huge reflection, not only of lifestyle, but my own self-worth coming forth and the loss of my own identity and, really feeling like I was in the void and grappling for answers and not finding them because I was looking in all the wrong places. And that led me into what we're going to discuss today on this podcast is plastic surgery and losing myself to this void of it really is a realm where women are targeted as objects to be consumers off of, and we're moneymakers when our body image is targeted, right? And I fell exactly into that. I was in a circle of other young women who that was normal for them in their lives, and they were commenting on my body and they were dropping these hints. Why don't you get breast implants? Like, why don't you do this? And I fell for it. And I'm not saying this is on their shoulders at all. This was my insecurities that I totally dove fully into and I let it become my identity. My insecurities became my identity. So I bought into this lie that I needed to externalize perfectionism to try and find any sort of peace in my internal landscape. And getting breast implants was like the ultimate manifestation of that very poisonous thought process. Nothing about that entire journey leading up to getting breast implants felt right. And that is another testament to how much I was self-abandoning. And I had created these significant patterns that was just self-abandon after self-abandonment after self-abandonment. And, at the time that was normal. It was so normalized. If you feel something, that inkling, that intuitive nature of the feminine, you just stuff it, and that was very much
weakness.
It's weakness, right? Yeah. Like you got to push forward. You need to just do the damn thing, and so that is exactly how I entered into all of this. So much self-condemnation, self-abandonment, but then you're pairing that with this extremely wounded masculine shield that I was operating out of. And so I went into this surgery. I got the breast implants, all of this while telling myself, I'm going to find myself. This is going to make me feel like a woman again, and really this was the precipice of me losing myself so I could actually find myself in the most humbling way, most sacred journey, right? But I didn't know that at the time. So I had breast implants for 4 years. Between the ages of like 22 up to when I was almost 27. Is that 4 years? No, I was 23 to 27. Yeah. And so that was the most numbed out state of living of my entire life. And when I talk about breast implants on my social media platforms, a lot of women come forward with that being the first thing that they share. They're like, when I had breast implants, I was a robot. I was a zombie. Like I was literally completely unable to tap into myself as a woman. And that was 100% true for my story as well. And so those 4 years of existing with breast implants, I lived in the most chronic of states of survival mode. And all the while grappling, thinking this was supposed to make me feel better. I was supposed to find myself and feel like a woman. And now I feel like I have come to some sort of precipice where I am lost as lost could be. But God forbid that I share this, because I did all this in the name of finding myself. So I have to uphold this image. And that's a very common theme, you know, in the realm of women who have traversed through implants and explants, is this externalization of this facade and this masking that everything's all right, you know, making this outward temple look like it's perfect. So inside we should just assume the same, you know, and it's a cover up. It's this perfectionism is a facade, and it's a cover up for the dismantling and the disarray that's actually existing at such a profound level on the internal spectrum, right? So emotionally and energetically, I really struggled to connect to anybody because I could not connect to myself. And that was the kicker, right? Like I was lost to myself. I just found it so challenging to be present, like truly present on an emotional, energetic, spiritual, physical level with anybody. And that included my own little girls at that time, you know, and looking back, I think something that I would just share over and over again with women who are on the same journey is like thinking about the impact of our disconnection with self and how it ripples out to those that we love the most. And that was a very huge piece of humble pie that I had to make peace with. It was a huge piece of the journey. I developed what we can label as autoimmunity and sleep apnea and insomnia and chronic acne and SIBO, and you know, the list goes on and on and on and on. And that's what the medical system told me. I started to go holistic at that point because the medical system, I realized, was completely failing me, and I was not going to be seen in the way that I was desiring there. I turned to, you know, naturopaths and stuff, and it was the same things. The process was just a little bit different, but you know, they stuff you with a million supplements and tell you you're going to be fine. And that's still not the answer. No one in all those 4 years ever once addressed my nervous system or my breast implants. And I had gone through probably about 10 practitioners, both medically and holistically, in that time span, and seriously spending months with each one. And no one addressed that once, which is bizarre to me. Also speaking to how normalized we've made this, right? We've been taught that, oh, breast implants or plastic surgery, whatever, like it doesn't affect your body. And we just take it at face value. And it was shocking to me after the fact when I was like, holy crap, like even these people who are in the health industry in the name of wellness and vitality don't recognize how foreign objects in our body affect us on every single spectrum. Right?
It's interesting that it's hard for us to see, and it's just a testament to the dismemberment we, like, our society has experienced
100%.
really since like the Industrial Revolution, where everything was like everything has a separate expert on it, which means they're not attached. Like someone takes care of lungs and someone takes care of the heart, and they're not the same. And even further than that, to see in how a lot of the holistic health industry is just allopathy with herbs and vitamins.
It is.
So if you're prescribing
100%.
a dose to cure you from something without any integration or internal work, that's allopathy.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. And I started to realize that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it came to this breaking point that was 100% necessary for my own reclamation of myself, of either I do this or no one does, because everything is leading the journey back to me. And it became very clear that this was my journey, in that I needed to do some serious research and deprogramming and opening. And that unfolded me at a catastrophic speed into all the rabbit holes. And all of a sudden, we're asking questions like, is the earth really flat? What do we actually think about all these things? And, you know, it, like everything open, like the sky was the limit at that point, right? Because all of a sudden the awakening started to unravel. Like really, the little itsy bits of it started it when I had my babies. But it was at that breaking point when everything around me felt like it was falling apart. And quote unquote, I couldn't find any answers, that I was like, okay, is everything that I've been taught truth? And that began my search for truth on every spectrum of my life, literally every spectrum. And I was in huge denial of wanting to admit to myself that these breast implants were affecting my health even then. It was so triggering because to admit and sit with that grief and the truth of the magnitude of the feelings that come with everything to do with my choice of self-abandonment and getting these breast implants. I mean, I had to go all the way back to my inner child, and I needed to sit with her a lot, and it was going to change my life. And that was the scariest thing in my mind that I could conjure up to do, because it felt so overwhelming. And it was just so much to feel, right? And my capacity to feel had been so challenging the entire time I had implants. And as I sat with that, I was like, okay, this is it. I can't feel. And I've been running from feeling for so long, and from being a woman that can hold her worth and exist in the full essence of who she is in every fiber of her being. And these breast implants have been my cover for that. So I had a beautiful and extremely sacred meeting that I did not expect. And I was actually at a photo shoot with my sister, and we were up in the Northwest Territories, and we were at a set of waterfalls, and it was about 5:00 in the morning, and the sun was just rising. It was so magnificent. And there was so much fog present, but the sunlight and the rays of that sun was piercing through at such a blinding, alarming rate that it was hard to open our eyes fully around this water. And all of a sudden, I had all of these like realizations happening. I'm like, this is literally what's happening in my life. Like everything I'm looking at right now in my environment, right here, right now, that Mother Earth is literally bringing forward. I'm like, this is the piercing of all of the shadows that's coming forward. And it's time to move forward. I have to get these breast implants out. That was the first time I could actually admit that to myself. And it was just clear as day, that it was almost audible, Melissa, like you've got to reclaim yourself, like right here, right now, make this decision. And it was so potent and so fragile all at the same time. It was as if I was in this liminal spiritual space in that moment. And I had the choice right there to change my life forever for the woman that I chose here to be in my soul contract, or deny it again.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you're either reclaiming yourself now or not in this lifetime. And that hit me so hard. I remember having to sit down and take a breath. And then my sister, which this was a really amazing part too. She asked me, she's like, Paris, because we were getting dressed for this photo shoot too. And she's like, are you glad you got breast implants? Like what? And this is not something we talked super frequently about. She knew about it, and I talked to her. I kept it very secretive because I was ashamed. And she didn't talk to me about it much because I wasn't open to this conversation those whole 4 years. And she asked me in that moment, and I was like, this is it. Like, the breast implants were audibly brought up now. They've got to go. And so that was just such a clear, potent moment where like everything in the cosmos came together to give me such a felt experience for this choice I was making. And I went home after our photo shoot. I immediately started researching on people that I could explant through, who believed in breast implant illness, who understood how incredibly important it is to reclaim your sovereignty through coming back to your body. Like, I was like, I went into this process carrying a shitload of trauma. And that was literally encapsulated in my body, in my scars, in these implants, those whole entire 4 years. That's what I was operating out of. If I'm going to choose now surgery to, which is terrifying in and of itself, to now choose myself, again, hugely terrifying and confronting journey. I need someone that can hold me through this. And it needs to be an experience that I can come out of, and it's digestible. I was able to process it because I felt held, because someone understood me where I was at and they helped me through this. And I did find that, and it was phenomenal. I literally felt like I was surrounded by angels. Like, all of the people in that facility were angelic. Like, they were so understanding, and they were acknowledging, what I've gone through and holding me through my tears and the fear and all of it. Because, also, and this is a significant thing that I want to address here too, for, women who are looking at explanting, the fear of not knowing who you're going to be on the other side of that, on every spectrum, is a really real thing. I mean, even if we're looking on the level of even just the physical, how are you going to look after? That's a big fear for a lot of women. It was a big fear for me. And knowing that how I came out of this, I was going to have to make peace with, because I was committed to making peace with that, no matter how I looked. Right. And I was not going to do more surgeries ever again on this spectrum, And so it's just so much to sit with. It feels like such a gamble, because here you are at the mercy of your surgeon, knowing that hypothetically none of this should have happened in the first place. But you needed to go through this journey, right? For whatever reason, I chose this journey. Like, this was part of this life experience, and I chose this journey. And that surgery and that entire experience was an incredibly spiritual process for me. And when I went under that knife, they played a beautiful song for me that I could hear as they put me out, and I was like, I'm literally, this is a death. And I cried. And I was like, I am saying goodbye to all of these years of self-denial and self-abandonment and these ancestral wounds that I've carried with me for who knows how long, and the reclamation of myself and this era, and of my daughters, and of the woman I hold and I touch and I'm in service to forevermore. Like, this is the dawning of that new era, and I had to die to myself that day. So it was such a death process in every way. And there was just so much symbolism there, and it was incredibly, incredibly potent, and it changed my entire life, And then upon waking up, I woke up in tears, and I felt at home. I was like, I did it. I did it. Like, I was looking for this all along. And I always had this, but I had to go through such a process to realize this sacred holy temple of my body is non-definable by any of the beauty standards. It's untouchable by everything that's projected onto us. And I just lost sight of that for a while, and so many of us do. And I'm like, this is going to be forever a testament to the rest of my life, that everything I touch and I do in this lifetime as a woman is, I want women to feel that their bodies they're sacred, potent, powerful homes, right? And they shouldn't think anything less of themselves. And so that was absolutely the biggest spiritual awakening of my life thus far, is going through that. And I know because people are going to ask, it's very common for me to receive the questions of, okay, what else did you experience though? Like after explant, how did you turn out? Like all the questions that are very intimate, but they're hard to ask, and so I want to address that here too. Every single quote unquote symptom, which was really just my body being like, get these things out. Like, let's get back home, woman. Like, find your root, find yourself. That's really all it was, right? I didn't have Lyme's disease. I didn't have any of that stuff. It was my body manifesting the magnitude of the self-abandonment present and the pulls of coming back home, the pulls of returning, right? As soon as I did that and I followed through, everything, every single thing left within a matter of most of it within the first month. It was incredible. But, I wasn't even surprised because at that point I knew, I was like, my body's got me. Like, this is a very intimate relationship and like nothing I've ever had up until this point. And that delved me into an entirely new becoming of myself. It was discovering the voice of my womb, discovering the root of my womanhood, and it just went on and on and on and on. And now I have a body that needs tending to on a very particular intimate level because of the amount of damage that has been incurred on me through my choices. And so, doing breast massage and really speaking prayer and breaths of life over my body was something that became part of my daily rituals. And that never existed in a million years. Prior to that, like I wouldn't have even entertained that thought before getting breast implants or while I had them. My breasts, they're never going to be what they were pre-surgery. Like they're not. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. There's a lot of grief that's held. And it's the space of the lungs. And that is very much an affinity of the lungs, right? That's where we will tend to hold grief. And so that whole area, just was longing to be felt and expressed for so long. And that's exactly what I did. It was very much a journey of expression after I explanted and discovering what that meant and discovering what it is to feel pain, but not identify with the pain. There was just so many things that came with that. But oh my goodness, the amount of medicine women that I have found through this journey that have been woven through these threads and this tapestry of my own unraveling has been incredible. And the amount of healing I was able to receive and continue to for addressing scar tissue, for addressing, just somatic aspects of things, for repatterning neural pathways that, get really stuck, addressing what actually happens, when you're unconscious on a table, your body holds that memory. Your mind might necessarily not, right? And so merging the subconscious with the conscious and healing those aspects, there's so many layers and depths to the journey of getting implants, explanting. And I honestly feel like not one of those aspects of my healing journey has been left untouched because it's like, okay, a medicine woman would show up and she would help me find myself even deeper because they're not here to heal us, right? They're here for us to find the healing in ourselves. And the amount of women that have gifted me that experience is profound because I did not have that ever once before I explanted. So I think that's also a huge testament to our aura and our energy. Look what I was repelling for so long, being in self-denial, to being able to receive, to seeing myself as my own healer. I wouldn't have accepted that if I'm being honest. I wouldn't have. I gloated over the thoughts of how cool that would be and how wonderful it would be, but I wasn't honest with myself. I had no sense of truth with myself at that intimate of a level. So that was another beautiful, profound gift and testament to where I arrived and what this space of my life is now opening myself into. And that has been one of the greatest gifts, hands down, is women. It was women who tended to me.
This sounds so much. I see the parallel with birth and rites of passage in this,
yes,
that you had
100%.
an additional rite of passage in your life. Like you got to even maybe reclaim your birth ones that weren't supported by women and weren't what you knew, right? Like in that surrendering and going in and like actually dying during the process, a
Yes.
part like you die. And that's what
Yeah.
birth feels like, right? When
Yes.
you have your baby and then you come through born as this new mother and you're born as this woman who's actually living in her body, who's like
Yes.
embracing it as your home. It's
Yes.
so beautiful. And then to be tended to by women in that like postpartum, post-surgery
Yes.
experience, right? You
Yes.
got to do that. And like, just imagine if we, like, that was part of our communities, that was offered in all of our births, our first births, right? That's how we could come through,
100%.
because that's, oh, there's like so many ways to engage in a rite of passage, but what a lovely way that is, like, to holistically come home to your body and be born as the woman you need to be for the next stage.
Yes. And that's something that's a language we understand as women. We understand life, death, rebirth, like no one else does, right? On such an intimate, profoundly spiritual level. And then on top of that, the birth process and the postpartum experience. And like you said, the rites of passage and initiation. And I was gifted that back. I mourned for years after I had my little girls over what I wish I had and what could have been, should have been, and that was the paradigm I was living in. That was as far as I could get with that. And never once believing that had I been true to myself, that it would come back around. I would be able to experience being cared for in that postpartum era in a different way. I was just very close-minded to that outside of the exact experience. And it was after, of course, my surgery, like you said, and you noted that. And that was exactly what that was. I was like, whoa, I just experienced birth and death and being cared for and tended to, like I had mourned for years after my girls, but it was because I was finally arrived at a place of surrender where I could receive it.
That's a thing, like, the feminine is, it doesn't feel safe in our culture sometimes, and especially, like, as we're growing up as, like, very young women. We spoke to this earlier a little bit. There's a piece where, it's like you push through and you force it and you make yourself do things and and then, there's a place for that, sure. Like, there's a piece of masculine in all of us, but that's a masculine energy, that force and push through and do it and make it happen. And to really receive as a woman from other women, there's a softness and a vulnerability to that.
There
And it
is.
is like the coming home to yourself and your body and settling in there. And a big piece of the feminine, I think, is about receiving.
Yeah, 100%. And, reclaiming my feminine essence was a foundation, was a cornerstone coming out of, this whole experience with implants and explanting, was reigniting and loving and tending to and nurturing my feminine, because I was in denial of her for all those years, right? And when there's no safety in the body, how can the feminine express and be present, be witnessed, be seen, be held, be heard? She cannot, right? And that goes for how we're operating even in our own bodies. And that was a huge part of my story. So, wow, the feminine, she needs safety and she needs to know her body is home, because that's when her magic and her mysticism can fully spring forth. And that's where other women can meet her. Right. Otherwise, we're gonna operate out of sister wounds and mother wounds, and it's going to be that like anti-magnetism effect, right? And the vulnerability,
and that's where it also, I
is,
think, it stifles the birthing creative process within us. That you actually, I think for most of us, we have to get soft and settled
100%.
and in our bodies, and you're right, feel safe and like warm and nurtured in that place, even by ourselves, like do it for ourselves. And out of that, like we're creators, we are life givers, we're right. Whether or not you birth babies, we all enter the phase of the mothering place. We're mothering something, we're birthing something. And that's where it sits in us, when you can soften and drop down and
Yeah, it's so true. It's such a massive part of our becoming as women. It's an integral
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, a thing I think about, I have no answers to, but I don't know, maybe you've thought about it, is like, so with our little girls, when we think about how we're going to nurture them through womanhood as they come into womanhood. And hopefully, I mean, everybody has to go on their journey, right? Like, sadly, I can't just impart all my wisdom, just like my mother tried to. And I was
Right.
like, no, I'll
Yes.
figure it out. Right. That's part of
Exactly.
the journey. You figure it
It
out, you make
is.
some mistakes, and it's all part of the story. Like, what can I do to, like, guide my daughters? Yeah, what can I impart to them to help them come home to their bodies, to help them embrace the softness of femininity, to uh, accept mothering and nurturing and offer it. And I don't know.
I believe that every single mother who has daughters sits with this to want to extend her another.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I don't have all the answers either. My daughters are 9 and 7. I have a lot of experiences left with them. But one of the biggest lessons I have learned is when I am at home with myself and my softness and my femininity and my unabashed expression in a sovereign way, it gives them permission to do the same.
Yes.
And that's something I didn't grow up witnessing with the women in my life. And it was very much like I'll figure it out. I'll do it my way. It was the high and lofty woman who she's got it all together, as far as perceptions go. And it's just not, it doesn't serve us in the long run. It's going to give us the opportunities to soften and find ourselves, right? It's going to give us the opportunities to surrender. But wow, like, if I could save my daughters from some of what I've gone through, right? Like, that's a big one, is the more that I can be truthful with myself as a woman in all of the spectrums of womanhood, in all of her seasons, in all of her flavors, like, my daughters will feel the same, because, it's so beautiful. Really, we are the nervous system for our children for the first 7 years of their life, indefinitely, right? And so we repattern ourselves. We're repatterning our fascia. We're repatterning our mindsets and neurological pathways, and how we allow ourselves to be woman and living rooted in her womb, and all of the ancestral wisdom that exists there, like, that transfers over. So many women, and this is myself included, believe that they get one shot to pattern their child, and that's in utero. And if they miss that, if they didn't have that awakening, that knowledge there, that they've blown it. And that's just so untrue. That's just another lie to keep us outside of trying, right? Outside of believing. There is so much we don't know, if we're talking on
It's
a spiritual
forever.
realm, and the mysticism, it's always there. Part of being a woman is being a mystic. There's always magic present. There always is, right? And so, those first 7 years is a big deal, and if we miss that, quote unquote, miss that, because we're not, there's no such thing as missing the boat. There's always opportunity, right? Like, there's always, well, we're going into really the epitome of our daughters as maiden, and into menarche, right? And into bleeding rites, and into them becoming a woman. And look at how impressionable and sacred and intimate and vulnerable that is, and there's just continual seasons where we have the beautiful invitation to be present with ourselves, to be present with our daughters, and to impart wisdom. And so it's never ending, like you said.
It's never over. Like, I don't think you can miss the boat on that, because our daughters,
I agree,
in this way, will learn from all our mistakes too, right? All the
Yes.
things they see us unwind. And as we continue to be open to more understanding and
Yes.
more coming home to ourselves, they get to watch that too. Like, my mom has always been a wise mystic my whole life, but in the last 5 years, she's gone through a whole other kind of awakening. And I still get to learn from her.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I'm in my 30s, and I still
It's
I
great.
still get to see that and be like, that's possible for me. And now
Yeah.
some of that stuff I don't have to do because
Yes.
she's like making the way
Yes.
for the family continually, even though
Absolutely.
I'm well beyond like the small
Yes.
thresholds. That's, I find, a comfort as a mother because, I've been a mother for many years now. I have many children. And I'm not the same as I was with the first one, right? I'm not the same mother for the rest of the children. And sometimes I feel bad for that one because I'm like, ooh, like I was
I
learning a
feel
lot. I was
that.
22.
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
learning a lot at the time.
Yes.
But it's okay because he's still with me. He still gets to continue. We get to learn together. And maybe that's it. Like the grace for ourselves, knowing that
Yes.
it's never too late. And knowing, we spoke
Yes.
to this before we started recording, but it's ever evolving. Like,
Ever
what we
evolving.
figured out today, if we recorded, let's next year record this story again, you'll have learned new things. You'll have more
Yes.
to share, right? Things you thought were for
Yes.
sure capital T truth today. Maybe next year, like, we'll both know more. I'm sure we will. I hope we
Truly.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another beautiful thing is I believe fully that our children chose to come in that season of our life for a reason. That's part of their journey. Part of their journey is our journey. How humbling is that?
Yeah.
Like, that's profound to me, and I think, what a remarkable little soul you are. How brave are you to have walked through some of my darkest, deepest moments with me, I'm like, wow. And I just think like they are so powerful, our children.
Yeah.
And wise beyond their years. And the thing is, like, my girls know that too, right? Our children know that when they have a mother who can be that truthful and honest with herself and her journey, and they see that, and there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to pretend about, there's no masks to put on. Like, wow, the amount of empowerment that gives our children is absolutely insurmountable, right?
Yeah. Work they don't have to do.
Yes.
They can work on the next piece.
Exactly. And that's a gift in and of itself.
Totally.
Right?
Yep. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that story.
Well, thank you
what do you
for
have?
giving me the space.
Yeah. Thank you. What do you have? What offerings do you have out there in the world? How do people connect with you?
So, without making this a long story in and of itself, I do want to share just a tidbit of this as a preface to my current offerings. So, it was all due to my journey through implants and explanting that led me into the deep sovereign realm of body work for women. Because in my own journey and coming home to myself, that was something I had never experienced up until that point of being truly held. Every fiber of my tissue knowing that I'm held, I'm seen, I'm safe from another woman. Nothing medical about it. Everything extremely sovereign about it. And then, of course, like I was sharing, even my own practices, I was so drawn to touching and holding and feeling my body and this communication through touch, which is, again, goes back to a whole other rabbit hole we could go down on birth and how that's one of the most key factors in the very first moments of every child's life is the communication of touch and how profoundly healing and communicative that is, right? And we often lose sight of all forms of touch as we grow older, right? And how deeply sacred and sovereign it is and expansive it is. And so after explanting in my own journey with this sovereign touch from my own body and women laying their hands on me and holding me, I was like, this is the next initiation. I am craving and feeling this potent pull to have my hands on women's bodies. because I can't imagine what my journey would have been like after explanting if I had not been held by women, if I had not been tended to by women. It would have been an entirely different experience. Entirely. So that unraveled and opened a door to me having the immense honor and opportunity to study under Carly Boudry and Andrea Terrones with Law School. And this is definitely, I feel like something I've called in for a very long time, without even being consciously aware of it for part of that long time. So that is really the epitome of my offerings right now, is offering this sovereign touch body work and working with the womb space and connective tissues. And a big, beautiful focus of mine too is working with women who have gone through this, gone through surgeries. You know, we all carry very similar threads of stories, whether it was through a cesarean birth or through something like an explant. You know, there is very similar threads and energetics that hold weight in the body from that. And so that's been a really beautiful way that my story has turned into medicine, that I'm really honored and excited to offer women through my work. So hands-on work is just something that I still, even saying this now, I'm like, is this real? Like this all came forward from that. Like I'm just so humbled. But that is definitely where the magic of my offerings lies. Outside of that, I do mentor and walk alongside a lot of women in what I call Rewilding the Feminine. And I do this in group settings as well as one-on-one work. And it's really delving into the cyclical natures and the reclaiming of the feminine in women going through lifestyle and nourishment and birth and, you know, the all-encompassing aspects of the mysticism of the feminine. So that is what I do offer virtually and in person. That's what part of what I was speaking to at Earth Daughters was that, which is very, very beautiful. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's been coming up a lot in my life. I keep meeting different people who have worked with Carly and who are offering her sort of that womb continuum care.
Yes.
Is that what you're calling it? Yeah.
Yeah, womb continuum midwifery, womb continuum care. Yeah, there's a few different coined titles. It is incredible.
I love that women are popping up all over for that. Like there's probably someone not too far from you, you know?
It's time for it. You know, I feel like we've been calling this in for a very long time as women, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, this, you know, addressing what's been titled as the witch wounds has been very much part of this journey too, of women really reclaiming the art of healing, the ancestral arts of healing. They've been buried for a long, long time. And it's taken a lot of very powerful, brave women to carry that through the generations. And Carly and Andrea are two of those women. They are phenomenal. They are masters within this. And it has been amazing to see more women now rising to this and being able to be students of them and this wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always belonged to women. The healing
100%.
arts have belonged to women. And we know about the burning of the witches for all the reasons. And I see that resurgence in our generation here of taking that back.
So much
and like
so.
we're gonna learn that again, and it's going to belong to us. And we're gonna share it with each other because we can be sovereign in all ways that we want to be, right? Like whatever. You really don't need the man for any of those things about our bodies that we're taught that we need them for. And the other piece that I never would not have just come to me is the power of touch, like you're talking about. I did one of Carly's nectar classes when I was pregnant last
beautiful.
time, which is just like tip of the iceberg, I think, of what
I
she
know.
offers, right? And it
but how powerful.
Mind. It was so powerful. And really, like, it was, I might have talked about this before. I don't know. I'll say it again though. It was, so it's like the 1 hour of anatomy and then 2 hours of your own hands,
self-touch.
guided touch. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to like clean or do stuff for the first hour because I know anatomy. Like I've been a doula for 15 years. I've, did all
Oh
the
my gosh, this is literally me when I did Nectar. This is so funny. Same.
Right? I was like, it's cool. Like, it's fine. But it's like a bit of a waste of my time because like I know where everything is. I could label the diagram blindfolded. And then she goes into the hour and I'm like, what? Like,
oh my
mind
gosh.
is blown. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know anatomy. I thought I knew anatomy. So that was amazing. And then just like from that tip of the iceberg, a couple hours of just a little bit of guidance around my own body. I would never have thought, like I would have thought, okay, so like you could, I believe you could work on adhesions and scar tissue. Like that makes sense to me with your fingers.
Yeah.
But like that you can, with your hands, connect to emotional pieces to your past and your sexuality.
Totally.
That's not something not something I saw at all. So yeah, I think I have to delve a little more into that. That was just a tiny taste. I'm like, yeah, there's something there. There's something there I'm supposed to look at.
Yeah, Carly is such a wise medicine woman.
She is. Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'll put ways people can contact you in the show notes if they'd like to connect.
Thank you so much for having me. This was very, very beautiful.
Thanks for listening. You can head to Instagram and birth.throughtheveil to see birth pictures or just pictures from each episode. The show notes have links and more ways to connect, along with the link to submit your birth story. I would love to hear it. New episodes of Through the Veil come out every other Tuesday. You can follow, subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast to be in support. Until next time.